The cold silence of space surrounded the lonely research station. Ethan sat in the control room, his eyes heavy, his hands shaking, his breath slow. He had been awake for more than 40 hours, and every minute felt heavier than the last. But he knew one thing with perfect clarity: he must not fall asleep. The screens in front of him glowed with faint blue light, showing readings of the ship's systems. Everything seemed normal, but Ethan's heart told him the truth. The danger did not come from broken machines, or from the vacuum outside. The danger came from inside his own mind. Whenever his eyes closed, even for a second, they came. The first time had been small, almost like a dream. He had nodded off. Only for a few moments. When he woke, he saw black shapes crawling along the walls. At first he thought it was a trick of his tired eyes. But then one of the shadows turned, and he saw glowing white eyes staring at him. They were not hallucinations, they were real, Ethan had screamed. Jumping to his feet, knocking his chair to the floor, the shapes melted back into the darkness as if afraid of the light. The silence returned, but his heart raced like a drum from that night. He understood the truth. Please, do not let me fall asleep. Because when I sleep, they come. Now he lived in a nightmare of his own. He forced himself to stay awake with coffee. Alarms and cold water splashed on his face. He tied strings to his hands so bells would ring if his arms fell down. He even burned his skin with a heated spoon once. Just to keep his eyes open. Pain was better than the shadows. Pain was human and the shadows were not. But the body can only resist for so long. His vision blurred, his thoughts grew slower. Sometimes, in the middle of a sentence, he forgot what he was saying. Sometimes, he felt the station itself whispering to him, calling him to rest. Sleep is safe, sleep is kind, sleep is warm, but he knew it was a lie. Tonight felt worse than usual. The air was heavy. The lights flickered every few minutes. He checked the generators 3 times, but they were working fine. Still, the shadows wanted him. He could almost hear them scratching at the edges of his reality, waiting for him to close his eyes. He whispered to himself, "Stay awake, Ethan. Stay awake." The station's clock ticked loudly in the silence. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Each second felt like an echo inside his skull. His body swayed, his eyelids dropped, his chin touched his chest. Then the sound came, a soft scratching. Like nails on metal, Ethan's eyes snapped open. He turned his head quickly, and the room was empty. Still, he knew what he had heard. He stood up, his legs trembling, and walked toward the hallway. The shadows always appeared there first, near the long glass windows that showed the stars. The universe outside looked calm, peaceful, endless. But he knew better. Peace was only an illusion. The real war was here, inside his mind, inside his fragile human need for sleep. Suddenly a whisper slid through the hallway. It was not English, not any human language. It was something older, darker. The sound made his skin crawl. His heart pound, his teeth clench. He wanted to cover his ears, but he forced himself to listen. The voice was calling his name, Ethan. He stumbled backward, almost tripping. He pressed his back against the cold wall and shook his head. No, I'm not asleep. You're not real," he muttered. But the voice only grew stronger. The lights flickered again, and for 1 second, he saw it, a hand black as night, reaching from the corner of the ceiling, long fingers curling toward him. He blinked and it was gone, but the mark on the wall, a black smear like burned smoke, remained. Ethan's breath came fast and shallow. He returned to the control room, slamming the door shut. Locking it with shaking hands, he sat again, but this time, he did not look at the screens. He stared at the door, waiting, listening. The scratching returned, louder this time, like claws dragging slowly across steel. He wanted to cry, but he held it back. Tears meant weakness, and weakness meant sleep, and sleep meant death. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time lost meaning when every second was survival. Ethan's head dropped again, and again the scratching grew. He bit his lip until he tasted blood. Forcing his eyes open, he whispered to himself, "Humans don't give up, humans don't fall." "I will not fall." The shadows waited. Patient. They had all the time in the world. But Ethan had only one mission left. Stay awake, stay alive, because when he sleeps, they come. Ethan's body was failing. His eyes burned like fire, his muscles trembled, and his head felt heavy. He had lasted longer than most humans could, but now his body betrayed him. The station was silent, the air cold, and the hum of the machines was the only sound left. And still he knew the shadows were waiting. He sat in his chair with his hands gripping the arms tightly. The bells tied to his wrists had saved him before, but even they could not hold back exhaustion forever. His head dropped for just 1 second, maybe 2. The bells rang faintly, but he did not hear them. In that small gap, the world changed. The temperature dropped suddenly. The lights above him dimmed until only a pale blue glow remained. The shadows stretched across the walls like liquid smoke. Something moved at the edge of his vision. Crawling, twisting, stretching thin like a spider's leg. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He forced his eyes open, and the dream broke, but not fully. This time the shadow did not vanish. It stood in the corner of the room, half-formed, like a creature made from smoke and night. Its arms were long, too long for any living thing. Its fingers sharp and endless, its head tilted with a sick curiosity. As if studying him, the eyes white and glowing, cut through the darkness like knives. Ethan's blood ran cold. He gasped and pushed himself back. His chair crashing to the floor, the creature hissed, a sound like steam escaping broken pipes. It moved closer, its body flowing like liquid, yet solid enough to scrape the floor. Ethan stumbled, grabbed the edge of the console, and forced himself to stay awake. Stay awake, he whispered. But the creature did not fade this time. It dragged its long arm across the console, leaving black burn marks in the metal. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. This was not a dream, not an illusion. It was here, in the same room as him. The thing that came when he slept was now real. He reached for the emergency light rod on the wall. With trembling hands, he ripped it free and snapped it open. Bright white light filled the room, flooding every corner. The creature screamed, its body twisting and pulling back like smoke in the wind. For a moment, Ethan thought it would vanish, but it only retreated to the far wall. Still watching, still waiting, Ethan realized the truth. The longer he stayed awake, the stronger they became. They did not just come from his dreams anymore. They were learning how to cross, and soon, the light might not save him. He held the rod tightly, the glow shaking in his hands. "Why me?" he whispered, his voice breaking. The creature tilted its head again, almost as if it understood the question. Then it pressed one claw against the wall and began to draw. Lines, symbols, strange shapes carved deep into the steel. The sight froze Ethan in place. He had seen these marks before. In the old logs he discovered, the ones left by the last crew. The ones who never survived. He wanted to look away. But the glowing eyes held him. Every instinct in his body screamed to run. But there was nowhere to go. The station was his prison, and the shadows were his hunters. The light rod flickered once, and his heart nearly stopped. If the light failed, he would be trapped with it. Suddenly, the creature rushed forward, its body stretching like black fire. Ethan raised the light, and the creature stopped inches from his face. The glow burned its skin, smoke rising where the light touched. It screamed again, louder, shaking the walls. Then it vanished, melting back into nothing. Only the burn marks on the console and the strange symbols on the wall remained. Ethan fell to his knees, gasping for air. He pressed his hands against the floor, his whole body shaking. This was no dream, no nightmare. This was real. The shadows were not only in his mind anymore. They had broken the barrier. He sat back against the wall, his eyes wide. He whispered to himself again and again, "Please, don't let me fall asleep, please. Don't let me fall asleep." Because now he knew what came when he closed his eyes. And next time they would not just watch. Next time they would kill. Ethan sat in the control room, his face pale, his hands shaking, his mind racing. The symbols burned into the metal were proof. The shadows were real, and they had touched his world. He stared at the black marks until his eyes hurt. They seemed to twist and move when he looked too long, as if alive. He knew he needed answers. He could not fight what he did not understand. The station had records, old files from crews who lived here before him. Most of the logs were routine, full of numbers and scientific reports, but deep in the archives, he had once noticed strange encrypted files marked with warning tags. Until now he had ignored them, afraid of what he might find. But tonight, after what he had seen, he could no longer avoid them. He powered up the old archive system. The machine whirred slowly, its screen flickering with static. Dust covered the console, a sign that no one had touched it for years. Ethan typed the access codes, his fingers trembling with every key. The files unlocked, and lines of text scrolled across the screen. The first line froze his breath. "They come when we sleep." He leaned closer, his eyes wide. The log was written by someone named Dr. Vela, a scientist from the first human crew on the station. Her words were shaky, uneven, as if she wrote them in panic. "They are not dreams, they are not illusions. They wait beyond the veil. They hunger for our minds. Our spirit, our light, only humans can see them. Only humans can draw them here." Ethan felt cold spread through his body. Only humans, that was why the creatures wanted him. That was why they appeared every time he closed his eyes. He scrolled further, reading the desperate notes. Dr. Vela described how the crew tried to fight the shadows. They used light, alarms, drugs, but nothing lasted forever. One by one, the crew fell asleep, and one by one, they disappeared. The final entry ended mid-sentence. "Please, if you read this, do not close your eyes. Do not—" And then nothing. Ethan sat back, his chest heavy. His thoughts dark. The truth was clear. No one had ever survived, and now it was his turn. He searched deeper into the files. Among the logs, he found images. Photos of walls covered in the same black marks the creature had drawn tonight. The same symbols repeated over and over. They looked like maps. Maybe doors, maybe warnings, he could not tell. But something about them felt familiar, as if he had seen them before, not only on the station walls, but somewhere deeper, maybe in dreams, maybe in human memory itself. A sudden noise made him jump. The scratching sound returned, this time from the ceiling above. Ethan's eyes darted upward. Dust fell from the vents, and the metal creaked as if something heavy moved across it. He grabbed the light rod, holding it tightly. "Not now." "Not yet," he whispered. He turned back to the screen, forcing himself to keep reading. Another file appeared. Locked with a red warning, he hesitated, then typed in the override code. The screen flickered and a video log opened. Dr. Vela's face appeared, pale, her eyes hollow, her hair messy. She looked like she had not slept for days. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "They feed on us, not our bodies, but our minds. They drink the spark inside, the human spirit. They come because we shine brighter than anything else, brighter than the stars, and when we sleep, the light inside us is unguarded. That is when they strike." The video cut with static. Ethan's hands shook, his heart racing. The pieces began to fit together. The shadows were not random monsters. They were predators, ancient and patient, hunting the unique spark of humanity. Other species in the galaxy never spoke of them, because maybe they could not see them. Maybe only humans carried the light these creatures wanted. And maybe that was why humans were feared, and why humans had survived so much. The thought struck him hard. Humans were not weak. Humans were not prey. Humans were the only ones who could face the darkness, because only humans had something worth stealing, something so powerful that even the shadows risked everything to take it. The scratching grew louder, surrounding the control room. Ethan turned off the screen and stood slowly. The symbols on the wall glowed faintly now, as if feeding on the presence of the creatures. He raised his light rod, but he no longer felt only fear. He felt something else, a strange, burning fire in his chest. Humans could hurt them. He remembered the battle from before. If humans could hurt them, maybe humans could destroy them. The shadows whispered from the vents, his name echoing in a dozen twisted voices. "Ethan, Ethan." He stared into the dark corners of the room and whispered back, "You came for me, but maybe you came for the wrong human." The lights flickered again. The scratching stopped and the silence returned. But Ethan knew the truth. They were not finished. They would come again, stronger, hungrier. And now he understood why, because inside every human was a fire, and the shadows wanted nothing more than to put it out. Ethan could not rest. The discovery of the old logs filled his head with fear and fire. The shadows were hunters and he was their prey. But unlike the crew before him, he refused to give up. He would not wait to be taken. If the creatures came when he slept, then he would set a trap. He walked through the station, his light rod glowing in his hand. Every corner looked darker now, every shadow felt alive. The walls whispered as if carrying hidden voices. Still, he kept moving, his mind focused. The old crew had made mistakes, they only tried to survive. Ethan wanted more, he wanted to fight. In the supply room, he searched for tools. Coils of wire, spare batteries, broken motion sensors, welding torches, and glass bottles. His hands moved quickly, collecting what he needed. He worked with trembling fingers, building small traps around the hallways, tiny alarms connected to sensors, lights wired to batteries, even fire. He made crude Molotovs with fuel and cloth. The station became a battlefield. He was turning his prison into a cage for the shadows. As he worked, he kept whispering to himself, "Stay awake, stay awake." His voice was cracked, his eyes bloodshot, but his will held strong. Every trap he built was another reason to fight, another reason to resist. If he failed, he would die like the others. If he succeeded, maybe he would be the first human to fight back. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning anymore. Finally, the station was ready. The halls glowed with weak lights. Wires snaked across the floors. Bottles of fire sat in corners. Ethan leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. The exhaustion pressed on him harder than ever before. His body begged for sleep, but he clenched his fists and shook his head. Not yet. He returned to the control room and stared at the black marks on the wall. The symbols seemed to laugh at him, as if mocking his efforts, but he ignored them. He set his chair upright, sat down, and forced his eyes to remain open. Then it happened. His head fell forward for only a second. The bells on his wrists rang softly. That was enough. The air changed at once, the temperature dropped. The lights dimmed, the shadows stretched. Ethan's traps activated one by one, alarms screaming through the halls. Bright flashes of light cut the darkness. But then he saw it. A creature stepped through the wall. Larger than before, its form was darker, more solid. Its glowing eyes locked onto him. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The first trap exploded in sparks. The light striking the creature, it screamed but did not vanish. Instead, it staggered forward, burning smoke rising from its arm. Ethan realized with terror that the traps only slowed it. They did not stop it. He grabbed one of the bottles, lit the cloth, and hurled it at the monster. The flames burst across the floor, lighting the room with orange fire. The creature shrieked and pulled back. Its body twisting in rage, Ethan's eyes widened. Fire hurt it. For the first time, he had found a true weapon. The creature slammed its claw into the console. Sparks flying, Ethan fell back, clutching the light rod. The shadows around the walls grew thicker, like an army waiting just outside. This was not one creature, it was only the first. If he slipped again, more would come. He held the rod high and shouted, "Come on then. Come for me." The glowing eyes narrowed. The creature hissed. It circled him slowly. Its claws scraping across the floor, Ethan kept his back against the wall. His heart racing, his traps triggered again, blinding flashes forcing the creature to stagger. He swung the light rod, striking its arm. The rod cut into the shadow like steel through smoke. The creature screamed louder than before. The sound rattled the walls of the station. For one moment, Ethan felt something new, not only fear but power. He could hurt them, he could fight them. The creature pulled back, its body breaking into smoke. It retreated through the wall, vanishing into the darkness beyond. The alarm silenced, the fire burned low, and Ethan was left alone again. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His face was wet with sweat, his hands shaking, but his eyes burned with new determination. He had not only survived, he had struck back, and the creature had bled. The symbols on the wall glowed faintly, mocking him still, but this time he whispered back, "Humans fight, humans endure, and I will not fall." The silence returned. But it was not peace. It was the silence before the next storm. Ethan knew the truth. They would return. Stronger and angrier, the battle was not finished. It was only beginning. The station was quiet again, but Ethan knew the silence was only a lie. He sat on the cold floor of the control room, gripping the light rod so tightly his knuckles turned white. His traps had slowed the shadow. His fire had burned it, but the fight was not over. The marks on the walls glowed faintly, pulsing like veins of black fire. They were calling, summoning more, and Ethan understood what was coming. The real battle had just begun. He forced himself to stand. His body heavy with exhaustion, every step felt slow, as if he were moving through water. But his mind was sharp, his will stronger than ever. Humans had always fought against impossible odds, and tonight would be no different. If they wanted him, they would have to fight for him. The first sound came from the vents, a low rumble like thunder. Then came the scratching, louder, faster, dozens of claws scraping metal. The lights above flickered until the room was nearly dark. Ethan raised the rod and shouted into the shadows, "Come on, I'm ready." The air split apart. And they came, not one, not two, but many. Shadows poured through the walls like liquid smoke, their glowing eyes filling the room. They stretched tall, some crawling on the floor, some clinging to the ceiling like spiders. Ethan's chest tightened, but he did not back away. He swung the rod, its white glow slicing through the dark. The first creature shrieked as the light burned across its chest. It fell back, but two more rushed forward. Ethan threw one of his fire bottles, flames exploded, lighting the control room with bright orange fire. The shadows screamed, their bodies twisting, some pulling away, but others pushed through undeterred. Their claws struck the walls. Sparks flying, one of them lunged at Ethan. He rolled to the side, barely escaping. Its claws tore through the console, ripping it open like paper. He came to his knees and swung the rod again. The light cut into its arm, and black smoke poured out like blood. The creature staggered back. Screaming, Ethan's heart pounded, adrenaline stronger than exhaustion. "Humans fight," he growled. "We don't run." The shadows surrounded him now, circling like wolves around prey. They whispered his name again and again. Dozens of voices echoing, "Ethan, Ethan." Their voices crawled into his head, twisting his thoughts. For a moment he almost dropped the rod, almost gave in. But he shook his head violently and shouted, "No, not tonight." One creature leapt at him, its body stretching wide like wings of black smoke. Ethan lit another fire bottle and smashed it against the floor. The flames roared up, burning the creature mid-air. It shrieked as its body broke apart into ash for the first time. Ethan saw one of them truly die. His eyes widened. His chest heaved. It could be done. They could be killed. The others froze for a moment, their glowing eyes fixed on him. The whispers stopped and the silence was heavy. Then they screamed together, a sound so loud the walls shook. They rushed at him in a wave, claws and teeth flashing. Ethan screamed back, charging forward. His rod blazing with light, he struck one, then another. His arms burning with pain but fueled by rage. The fire spread across the room, smoke rising, alarms screaming. The station itself shook under the chaos. A claw slashed across Ethan's arm, blood running down his sleeve. He stumbled but did not fall. Another claw struck his side, tearing fabric, pain ripped through him. But he pushed forward, swinging wildly. The light cut through the darkness, each strike burning holes into their bodies. The smell of ash and smoke filled the air. He fought like a cornered animal, every movement desperate. Every breath raw, the shadows shrieked, pulling back, but they kept coming. Ethan's body weakened, his vision blurred, but his spirit burned hotter than ever. This was not only survival. This was war, finally, with one last strike. He drove the rod through the chest of the largest creature. Its scream was deafening, shaking the entire station. The others froze, their glowing eyes wide. Then one by one they retreated, slipping back into the walls. The floor, the ceiling. The room went dark again. Silent except for Ethan's heavy breaths, he fell to his knees, his chest heaving, his face pale, sweat dripping, blood staining his clothes. The control room was destroyed, the walls burned, the consoles ruined. But he was alive, and more than that, he had won. For the first time in the history of this station, a human had stood against the shadows and forced them back. He leaned against the wall, his eyes half closed, his body begging for rest. But he whispered through cracked lips, "Not yet. I can't sleep yet." Because he knew the battle was not over. The shadows would come again, stronger, angrier. And when they did, he would be ready. The flames in the control room burned low, leaving smoke and glowing embers. Ethan leaned against the wall, his body trembling, his arm bleeding, his chest aching. He had fought and survived, but victory brought no peace. Instead, it brought silence, a silence so heavy it pressed against his ears. The shadows had retreated, but he knew they were not gone. They were waiting, watching, and learning. He closed his eyes for only a moment, not to sleep, but to think. The fight had shown him something new, something terrifying and powerful. The shadows could be hurt. They could even be killed. But why, he wondered. Why did they want him so much? Why only humans? What made humans different? He forced himself to stand and stumbled back to the archive console. The screens flickered weakly, damaged by the claws and fire. Still, the machine responded and the old files appeared again. He searched deeper, past reports, past warnings, past the desperate words of the dead crew. At last, he found something hidden. A folder locked under double encryption. His hands shook as he typed the codes. The screen blinked and the file opened. It was another video, older than the rest. The face that appeared was not Dr. Vela, but an older man, gray-haired. His voice strong, though his eyes showed fear. "My name is Commander Harker," the man said. "And if you are watching this, you already know the shadows." Ethan leaned closer. His heart pounding, the commander continued. "They are not dreams, they are not accidents. They are older than this galaxy. They wait in the dark places between stars. They cannot touch most races, but they can touch us. Only us. The man's eyes narrowed, his face grim. Humans carry something. Something the others do not. We are light, we are fire. We burn brighter than any living thing, and the shadows hunger for it. They feed on it. They want to steal it, to end it, to silence it forever. Ethan's breath caught. Light, fire, the human spirit. That was why they came. The commander's voice grew softer, almost a whisper. I believe this is why the galaxy fears us. Why other species call us dangerous, unpredictable, even cursed. They do not see the shadows, they do not hear them, but they fear the fire inside us all the same. And perhaps they are right to fear. Because fire can destroy as well as protect. The video cut to static. Ethan sat frozen, his mind spinning. It was true. Humans were not weak, they were not prey. They were targets because they carried something unique. The shadows wanted it. But maybe that same fire was also the only weapon that could fight them. He looked at his burned hands, his bleeding arm. His tired face reflected in the broken glass of the console. Despite everything, despite his pain and fear, his eyes still burned with defiance. That was the fire. That was what made him human, and the shadows had no answer for it. The silence broke suddenly, a whisper slid across the room, colder than before. This time it was clear, sharp, almost human. You cannot win, the voice hissed. You are one. We are endless, Ethan stood slowly, gripping the light rod again, his lips curling into a broken smile. Endless or not, he whispered back. You bleed when I strike you. The walls around him darkened. The black marks glowing stronger, the symbols began to shift, rearranging themselves into patterns he did not understand. Then he realized something that made his blood run cold. The marks were not just drawings. They were doors every time he closed his eyes. Every time a human dreamed, those doors opened, and the shadows stepped through. His hands tightened on the rod. If that was true, then this fight was bigger than him. It was not just his station, not just his life. It was every human everywhere, every man, woman, and child who slept under the stars. The shadows hunted them all. And he might be the only one who knew the truth. The lights flickered again, the whispers grew louder. Sleep. Ethan, the voices said. Sleep, let us in. Let us feed. He shook his head violently. His breath sharp. No, he growled. Not tonight. Not ever. His exhaustion was unbearable now. His body screamed for rest, but his fire burned stronger than his weakness. He stood in the ruined control room, firelight glowing on his face. The shadows pressed against the walls, the symbols glowing brighter, and he understood the revelation. Humans were not cursed, humans were chosen. Chosen to stand where no one else could. Chosen to carry the light. Chosen to fight the endless dark. The voices fell silent. But the silence was worse than sound. It was the silence of hunters waiting. Ethan gripped the rod tighter, his eyes unblinking. He whispered to himself one final promise. I will not fall. I will not give in. I will burn. And I will fight because I am human. The station felt like a dying beast. Its walls burned and broken, its lights flickering weakly. Its systems failing, smoke hung in the air, and every corner smelled of ash and fear. Ethan stood in the middle of the control room, his body trembling, his face pale, his eyes burning. He had survived the shadows, he had fought them, he had hurt them. But he knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. The whispers returned, softer now, like voices carried on a cold wind. Sleep, Ethan, they sang, sleep and be free. Sleep and join us. He clenched his fists, his bloodied hand gripping the light rod. His body ached, his wounds screamed. His head felt heavy. Every muscle begged for rest. Every nerve cried for release, but he forced his eyes open, forcing his spirit to rise again. I am not yours, he whispered. I will never be yours. The black marks on the wall pulsed with light. The symbols twisted into shapes he almost understood. Circles like stars, lines like maps, doors opening wider and wider. It felt as if the entire station was turning into a gateway, a bridge between his world and theirs. The shadows were no longer satisfied with whispers, no longer satisfied with one man. They wanted everything. The floor shook. The lights dimmed, alarms wailed. Ethan stumbled to the console, sparks flying around him. The screens came alive with strange codes, not human, not machine. Symbols of the shadows filled the monitors, glowing and alive. They spread like infection across the system. The station was being consumed, and Ethan realized with horror that if the shadows took it fully, they could step through not just into his dreams, but into reality itself. He slammed his hand on the controls, forcing power into the backup generators. The lights blazed for a moment. Bright white, the shadows shrieked, pulling back, the walls trembling under their cries. But the light faltered, the power fading fast. The station did not have enough energy to hold them off. Not for long. Ethan's chest rose and fell with sharp breaths. His eyes darted to the fire bottles, the traps, the broken weapons. He had used nearly everything. Only one weapon remained. His own mind, his own fire. If the shadows came through the door, he would have to face them directly. He would have to lure them in and strike where they were weakest, but it meant one thing. He would have to sleep. His throat tightened. His stomach twisted. It was madness. Sleep was death. But he also knew the truth. He could not fight forever. His body was already breaking. If he tried to stay awake longer, he would collapse, and the shadows would take him anyway. If he chose to face them, at least he could choose how. He dragged himself to the chair, his legs barely holding him. He placed the light rod across his lap, the last bottle of fire at his feet. He strapped himself in, his hands tied to the armrests, so if he woke suddenly he would not fall. His eyes closed slowly, his body trembling, and he whispered the words one last time. Please don't let me fall asleep, but if I do, let me fight. The darkness came fast. His body surrendered, his breathing slowed. And then the dream opened. He was standing in the same control room, but larger, darker, endless. The walls stretched to infinity, the symbols glowing like burning stars, and there they were. The shadows, hundreds, thousands, maybe endless, all staring at him with glowing white eyes. The whispers filled the air like a storm. You cannot win, you cannot fight. You are alone. Ethan lifted the rod of light, though here it burned brighter than ever before. He felt the fire in his chest spread through his arms, through his hands into the weapon. I am human, he said, his voice steady. I am not alone. I carry every dream, every spark, every fire of my kind. And I will not let you take it, the shadows screamed. Their forms twisting, their claws reaching, they rushed toward him, endless waves of darkness. Ethan roared back, swinging the rod, the fire exploding in white light. The dream shook, the ground split, the walls shattered. The battle began. Back in the real world, his body sat still, tied to the chair, his eyes closed, his lips moving in whispers. The lights flickered, the station trembled. The marks burned brighter than ever. The gateway opened wider. If he lost inside the dream, the shadows would pour through into reality. But if he won, he might close the doors forever. Smoke curled around his body. Sparks fell from the ceiling. The alarm screamed louder, and the camera of the archive, still recording, captured one final image. Ethan asleep, his face calm, his hands clenched, the light rod glowing faintly in the dark, and the voice of the shadows whispering in unison. This is only the beginning.